Hello and welcome to the Appeon 2016 Developer Installation Prerequisites. In this particular video, we're going to focus on the .NET version of Appeon product suite. Note that there is a Java or J2EE version of the suite as well. In order to install Appeon for PowerBuilder 2016, we have to have Microsoft Windows, typically 7, 8, or 10. Note that Microsoft XP version of Windows is not supported by Appeon. In recent days, most developers have 64-bit hardware, although you may still be running some older machine or older version of Windows 7 that's 32-bit. But for this install, because we're actually on Windows 10, I'm choosing to outline the 64-bit install. And I'm going to be installing the Appeon for PowerBuilder 2016 64-bit version. So we need to configure the environment for that 64-bitness. The first thing that the Appeon for PowerBuilder installation is going to do is have a look to see whether the PowerBuilder IDE is installed. This could be an older IDE that you got from Sybase, such as PowerBuilder 9 through 12.5, or it could be the recent one, which is SAP PowerBuilder 12.6. Note that the Appeon for PowerBuilder installer is going to put an Appeon developer plugin into the IDE, which will allow you to interact between the PowerBuilder IDE and the Appeon software seamlessly. The next thing that the installer is going to do is look for SQL Anywhere, versions 11 through 17. Older versions like 11 and 12 may have come from Sybase, where 16 and 17 could have come from SAP. It makes no difference. The key here is that because we're installing 64-bit Appeon for PowerBuilder, we need both the 32-bit and 64-bit bitness of the DBMS and, more importantly, the client. Remember that the PowerBuilder IDE is still 32 bits, yet the Appeon components are 64-bit in this particular installation scenario. The reason that we want SQL Anywhere is to install the Appeon demo applications, which I would highly recommend. This is a great way after the install to make sure that you can verify that the install is complete by running the demo applications. Also, the source code around that and how they work is a great learning tool. The next thing, of course, is the .NET framework itself has to be there, version 4, 4.5, or 4.6. And this relates to what version of Windows that you have installed as well. We'll cover that in more detail as we go through the tutorial. The last major piece, of course, is the Internet Information Server, IIS, where the Appeon for PowerBuilder installer will install the Appeon server. However, it's really not a server. It's a plugin or helper to the IIS web/application server. So the first thing is make sure that your PowerBuilder 12.6 in this example is installed. It could be older versions. If I pop up my Start button here on Windows 10, you can see I have PowerBuilder 12, 12.5, and 12.6 installed. It makes no difference which versions you have. At least as long as you have one version installed of PowerBuilder, you're ready to go. The next thing is to check to make sure that all the pieces of SQL Anywhere are there. In order to do that, you can do that through the control panel, programs, and features. So if I bring up my control panel at this point, and we go to, for example, SQL Anywhere 12, or any one that I want to use during the install, the Appeon for PowerBuilder installation will ask you which version you would like to install. Use the right-hand mouse button, select Change. Then you'll see another dialog appear, and then at a couple of seconds, the Next button will enable. So clicking Next, go to the next screen, which says Add, Modify, Repair, or Remove. You're going to select Modify. Continue on from there, you're going to see at this point which particular flavors of SQL Anywhere, that is the bitness, are installed. If you see an X beside either one of these, please make sure you change the X to a disk drive, and that will install the correct bitness that's missing. The optional piece that's here is MobiLink. MobiLink is a piece of software from SQL Anywhere that allows you to have a SQL Anywhere database on your Appeon mobile device and synchronize the data in that independent database with a corporate server such as SQL Anywhere Enterprise, ASE, SQL Server, or Oracle. Again, this is an optional feature and not necessary for just the regular Appeon install. I'm just going to cancel out at this point. And now I know that at this point everything's okay. And we move on here. We've already seen the fact that we've verified everything is there as far as the SQL Anywhere and the bitness. So we move on to the .NET framework. The .NET framework will be different if you're in Windows 7 and 8 compared to if you're in Windows 10. If you're in Windows 7 and 8, if you go to the control panel Programs and Features, you'll see that the Microsoft.NET Framework 4 Extended should be there. If not, we need to install that. In older versions of Microsoft Windows 7, the only way to get that would be go to the Microsoft website, MSDN, download the .NET Framework 4 complete installation in install.exe, and then run that. And that will actually then install the .NET Framework. In Windows 8 and Windows 10, you don't have to do that. We'll show you that in a second. For Windows 10, when you go to the Programs and Features, you're going to see that it says Microsoft.NET Framework 4 Multi-Targeting Pack. So make sure that that's there. If not, we'll show you how to fix that in a couple of seconds. In order to do that, if it's not there, it's very easy to do by using the Windows features on or off. So I'm going to return now to my control panel, and we'll select Turn Windows Features on or off. And you can see here that I already have the .NET Framework 3.5, 2, and 3 installed. That's optional. However, on this particular machine, I must make sure that the .NET 4.6 is active. In Windows 8, it may say ASP.NET 4.5. Optionally, you can also install the WCF, Windows Communication Facility Services. That's totally optional. For the .NET older versions, 3, 3.5, 2.0, that's up to you whether you want to install that if you're doing something with older versions of PowerBuilder, but not necessary for the Appeon installer. Okay, the next piece that's going to have to happen now is to make sure that once the .NET Framework is there, and after you actually hit OK here and exit this ASP.NET 4.6 in this example, it will install it. The other thing you can do is while you're here is check to make sure that IIS is also installed, and you can do that again from the same control panel. You can see here Internet Explorer is installed, also Internet Information Services installed. The first one that may not be checked is the FTP server. The FTP server is totally optional. However, it should be noted that the Appeon server does have an FTP capability to it. And in fact, even there's an interface, an extra workaround library that you can attach to your PowerBuilder applications that allows you to call Appeon components that will do file transfer between your Appeon web or Appeon mobile application and the Appeon server, who will then broker that information to the Microsoft FTP server within IIS. So if you're going to use that particular advanced feature, you may want to check this now. For web management tools, you need to make sure that the console, scripts and tools, and the management service is also installed. Optionally, IIS6 management compatibility to version 6 is totally optional. And that would only be used if you're using remote desktop and you're remoting into another machine that has an older version of IIS. Expand now the World Wide Web services, and we're going to have a look at the application development features. If we look at all these features that are listed here, these should all be checked. If they're not, check them now, and then you're ready to go. As far as the HTTP common features, the only thing that's optional is the WebDAV publishing. Everything else is mandatory. However, checking WebDAV publishing, the optional one, won't hurt anything, and you may need that later in another different project. Health and diagnostics, all of these should be checked. There's a lot of diagnostic and logging capability inside the Appeon suite of products, and they can take use of this extended logging. Also, for performance features, the main one that needs to be checked is the static content compression. Optionally, dynamic may also be chosen. That Appeon server can use this as well, to compress the information going back and forth between the client and server. Under the security, the only thing that's required is the request filtering. All the other ones are optional, but again, it makes no difference or harm if you check them all. So once you're done at this point, that you're ready to go as far as the .NET framework and the IIS server, if you hit OK, from here, everything should get installed that you see here. Now the problem is you've installed the .NET framework and you've installed IIS, and the linkage between the framework and IIS may not be there. So what you need to do is run a command from the DOS command prompt to make sure that you can link these two things together. Now you notice that you have to run the Windows Command Console in administration mode in order to do this. So in my example here, if I pop up the start button with my tiles and I go to the command here, normally in Windows 7 and 8, I can actually choose Run as Administrator. In Windows 10, I have to go More, Run as Administrator, and then I can run that particular dialog box in admin mode. So once you're in admin mode, now you can type in a command that'll run an executable that will tie the framework into IIS correctly. And I just happen to have a dialog open for that in effect. And in order to do that, what you have to do is you have to navigate to the .NET frameworks, which is Windows Microsoft.NET Framework 64 version 403019 is a folder that'll be on typically your C drive. Once that happens, what you need to do is you need to be able to type in that particular command. As you can see here, ASP.ASP.NET underscore register IIS exe-I. I like to add the extra dash enable option as well. When you run that particular screen, you'll see here that it'll actually then tie the .NET framework into IIS correctly, and you should get no error messages, and you're ready to go. Just type in IIS reset, and that restarts the IIS application web server, and everything's there as far as continuing on to the next step. However, in Windows 10, it's not the case. It doesn't work. So if we bring back that same dialog, and I was actually hit the enter key here, you'll see there that this option is not supported in this version of the operating system, which is Microsoft Windows 10. So we have to take a different route in this case. The different route is to use the DISM executable specifying online enable all feature ASP.NET 4.5 if you're on Windows 8, or ASP.NET 4.6 if you're on Windows 10. Again, this is done from the command console. You must be in admin mode in order to do that. If this runs okay, you've tied the .NET framework into IIS and you're ready to go. So now what we have to do is have a look at the permissions in IIS. There are two things that we need to do: the .NET trust level and the IIS API. In order to do that, we need to bring up the Internet Information Services IIS Manager. We can do that, of course, from the control panel. If we were to go back to home here, administrative tools, and you'll see here that the IIS Services Manager is available. And now we can go down and we can select the .NET trust levels. Drilling down further by double clicking, you'll see here that the trust level can have any one of these values. Make sure that you do, if it's not already selected, that full internal is selected. And then we can return back to the main screen, and we need to go down to the more towards the bottom, which is IIS API and CGI restrictions. Now we can see here that because we tied the .NET framework into IIS, there's probably two entries here. One relates to the 32-bit world, one relates to the 64-bit world. You have to make sure that both those entries are there. Also, that the restriction is allowed. If it's not, you can change that by using the right-hand mouse button and edit. And then you can change whether or not that path is allowed to execute. You need to have allowed on both .NET 4 frameworks. If that's the case, you're now ready to go as far as the IIS permissions are concerned. Moving on now to the folder security for IIS and Appeon. We'll need to use File Explorer in order to do that, because we have to make sure that a special user called IIS_I user is available. So in this particular task, we're going to open up File Manager, go to the root inet pub, drilling down one further, another folder called wwroot. And this is where IIS and Appeon are working within this folder and its subfolders. In fact, a little preview sneak here, if I drill down one more, you can see an Appeon folder has been added at the end of the Appeon for PowerBuilder installation, and that's actually where the Appeon server helper is installed. So not only does the Appeon server need access to it, PowerBuilder needs access to everything under wwroot, for example, if you're publishing web services like you see here. So we're going to return back to wwroot. I'm going to use the right-hand mouse button, Properties. And now I bring up a Properties dialog for wwroot. Selecting the Security tab, I scroll down and I'm looking for an entry for IIS_I users. I see it's already here. If not, I can use the edit button to go in and add that user to the list of users that can access that folder. Once the user is there, I need to highlight it and make sure that full control is allowed. If not, check the allowed button and then hit apply. And that will basically make sure that that user has access to the www root and all of its subfolders. Everything looks good on my machine, so I'm just going to cancel out of that. And now the folder security is done. So at this point, in order to test to make sure that you're ready to go, we can just open up any particular web browser. It should be noted here that Appeon 2016 and in fact even 2015 is multi-browser capable. That means you may want to install not just the default Microsoft Windows browsers, but you may want to install things like Firefox, Chrome, Opera, and other browsers that you may use within your organization. In this particular case, I'm running Windows 10, so it's no problem to start the Edge browser, which is also supported in Appeon 2016, typing in //localhost. And you see here IIS has responded, so everything looks good. The next thing is your security level, and that can be checked here using the Internet options. So again, I would return back to the control panel, which I'll have to restart again for a second. We will go down to Internet options, and you see this particular dialog result. Going to security, and then trusted sites, and then under the sites button, and that you should see http://localhost in the entries. If not, that just type it in here, that hit the add button, and whatever you type in will be added here to the list of websites that are trusted. So for example, if I was to bring up Firefox and typed in, for example, //localhost, then it works just fine. IIS responds as well. So congratulations, you're now ready to install Appeon 2016 web or mobile. Note that you can install both products from the same installation. That's called a universal installation. What governs the fact that you're installing Appeon web versus mobile versus the universal or both will be based on the Appeon key that you receive from Appeon Corporation. And then you just enter that in the install, and it'll direct you to install one or more or both of the pieces. So this concludes our video. Thanks for watching.